Okay, the last presentation today, so I will try to be dynamic. The artwork Pause by Latvian artist Inga Meldere, which I initially included in my article for Punktum magazine on women writers in history, for me visually represents the theme of erasure. In this piece, women's faces are obscured, that can be interpreted as symbolizing the broader erasure of women from history. And although they are present, their identities are rendered unrecognizable due to the absence of their facial features. They are on pause, for the time being stopped or suspended, however, with the implication that activities or processes will resume at a later time. In the context of literature or art, being on pause might symbolize a period of neglect, overlooked contributions, or the need to revisit and reassess works that have been not fully appreciated or explored. Reassessing underappreciated women writers is crucial for creating a more inclusive and accurate literary history. And during the 1970s and 80s, Western feminist critics such as Elaine Showalter, Sandra Gilbert, Susan Gubar, Adrienne Rich, Helen Sixus, and many others developed frameworks and methodologies to emphasize the importance of re-evaluating overlooked women writers. However, despite these efforts, the neglect and omission of women's voices in literary studies persists today, as current debates in transnational and world literature predominantly focus on male writers and also Western-centric perspectives. To counter these limited narratives, there's a need to shift attention, bringing lesser-known and forgotten women figures to the forefront, including focusing on the fringes of Europe, a work already mentioned today. And my paper today aims to re-evaluate the literary legacy of Latvian writer Alija Baumane through the lens of transnational feminist modernism, offering a fresh perspective on her contributions and also addressing the historical neglect of her work. And by examining how Baumane's writing aligns with or diverges from the work of other modernist women writers, I also seek to provide a more nuanced understanding of her place in literary history. Alija Baumane, born in 1891, studied philology and philosophy in St. Petersburg from 1917 to 1920. However, due to the turbulent times, her studies were irregular and she never finished her studies either. But this time was very important for her as she engaged with Nietzsche's works and likely encountered also Henry Bergson's philosophy, as noted by literary researcher Ingun Sekste. And also, despite the disruptions in her studies, her time at St. Petersburg was pivotal in shaping her literary sensibilities and exposing her to modernist ideas. Baumane left behind very little documentation of her life. The most significant surviving materials are about 30 letters that she wrote to her friend and actress Paula Baltābola, including also several written during her time in St. Petersburg. In one such letter from February 21, 1919, Baumane reflects, and here I quote her letter, which is in Latvian on the scene. It is evident that I face a continual retreat of life from me, yet life becomes more truly lived, even if invisibly. One must clear away everything unnecessary, stop completely, and ask oneself what is truly needed. By relinquishing the excess and dedicating oneself more eagerly to the truth, one finds peace and a sense of life's proximity. All else leads to the aridness of falsehood. End of quotation. This passage suggests that Baumane viewed life as gaining deeper meaning through internal experiences, where true engagement with life may not always be outwardly visible, but is profoundly felt on a deeper emotional level. Upon returning to Riga in the 1920s, Baumane became actively involved in the city's dynamic literary scene during the 1920s and 30s. Books by Baumane were published. Her 1924 short story collection, Auļojošā pilsēta, The Fast-Running City, draws on her experience also during the Great War and the Russian Revolution in St. Petersburg. And the title story employs a fragmented narrative, psychological exploration, emblematic of modernist style, and reflects themes of dislocation, alienation in response to societal changes, especially affecting women. In works such as her story Draudzenes, Friends, Baumane delves into the inner lives of her female characters, offering a nuanced psychological portrayals. Her 1927 collection Zemes medus, Honey from the Earth, continues to explore contemporary life, particularly focusing on women's vitality, sensuality, and intellectual engagement. She portrays her female characters pursuing independence in various forms. For example, one as an artist, another one as seeking adventure and pleasure, yet another as dissatisfied with life in general. These characters navigate the complexities of modernity, moving beyond traditional gender roles, despite the challenges they face. Baumane also highlights how factors like class intersect with gender, influencing women's autonomy and their relationships. Her later works continue to focus on similar themes. Her 1935 novella Lietuvietė Lithuanian explores female identity and societal expectations against the backdrop of revolution in St. Petersburg, while her 1939 poetry collection Dārzi un vakari, Gardens and Evenings, emphasizes personal and sensual experiences as well as the explorations of the unconscious. Despite her contribution to modernist literature, Baumane has often been described as a background phenomena, and her work remained relatively obscure, in part due to also gender biases and the critical reception of her time. Critics frequently described her writing as chaotic or disjointed, often accusing her of producing undeveloped and disorganized works. Her focus on emotional and psychological states coupled with a non-linear narrative style was seen by some as a lack of structural coherence. For example, critic Edgars Sūne remarked, "In Baumane's stories we enter a labyrinth where matter is too mixed up, constantly changing between an existing present tense and slightly chatty future tense. The grouping of the material often has no chronological, local, or logical plan, but everything is constructed according to free-flowing thought processes." Baumane also faced harsh criticism for her focus on female sensuality. The national discourse on femininity at the time excluded corporeality and sensuality, both of which were central to Baumane's work, and this divergence from accepted norms contributed to the negative reception of her writing. For example, critic and writer Helene Zalīte urged her to refine her style, eliminating obscurities and reducing the emphasis on sexuality in favor of more transparent portrayals of female experience. Similarly, writer Zenta Mauriņa criticized Baumane's sticky honey of sensuality, claiming that this focus prevented her from reaching the heights of personality. Baumane's divergence from the aesthetic and ethical expectations of the era, combined with prevailing cultural reluctance to recognize women as serious contributors to modernist literature, also contributed to her marginalization. As Ingūna Sekste, a literary scholar who wrote an essay in Baumane published in 1996, observed, readers and critics were unprepared for Baumane's advocacy of female freedom, individuality, especially regarding sexuality. Critics often dismissed her female characters as merely promiscuous women, and furthermore, satirical depictions of Baumane, such as Sigismunds Vidbergs' 1928 Kultūras balss calendar, conflated her character's sexual openness with her personal morality, reducing her creative efforts to accusations of moral failings, a judgment rarely applied to male authors exploring similar themes at similar time. Ultimately, Baumane's marginalization in literary history can be attributed to her lack of promotion and recognition within the broader literary discourse, where patriarchal norms often favored male writers and overlooked the feminist themes central to her work. In examining Baumane's work through the framework of transnational feminist modernism, it's essential to understand how this approach differs from, for example, peripheral feminist modernism. that my colleague Karls Svētiņš also mentions in one of his articles. While both perspectives seek to expand feminist discourse and challenge dominant narratives, they do so from distinct angles. Peripheral feminist modernism emphasizes specific cultural and historical contexts, focusing on reclaiming the silenced voices of women from smaller or marginalized literary traditions. In contrast, transnational feminist modernism explores the interconnectedness of women's experiences across national borders, aiming to highlight the shared and diverse challenges women face globally. This broader scope presents unique challenges for literary research as well, including the need to understand the historical, cultural, and political circumstances shaping literary works in different geopolitical places, and also familiarity with feminist modernist texts from various regions, and of course overcoming language barriers that complicate the translation and interpretation of non-dominant language texts. Baumane's work, while situated within the Latvian context, can be seen as part of a larger transnational feminist modernist movement engaging with themes that resonate beyond national borders. Her focus on alienation, identity, and the socio-political impacts on women's lives align with the broader feminist modernist project, yet her narratives are deeply shaped by the specific historical conditions of the early 20th century Latvia and also the Russian Empire. As Susan Stanford Friedman's concept of transnational locational feminist theory suggests, Baumane's writing reflects a localized feminist perspective while being open to the circulation of broader modernist ideas. Her exploration of women's lives during post-revolutionary upheavals adds a vital geopolitical dimension to feminist modernist literature, highlighting how global events influence gendered experiences. This interplay between the local and the transnational is also evident in Baumane's use of modernist techniques in her work Auļojošā pilsēta, Fast-Running City. In the story, Baumane uses fragmented narrative structures and psychological exploration to portray a day in the life of Livija Langrēna, a woman navigating the socio-economic instability of post-revolutionary St. Petersburg. Comparing this text to Virginia Woolf's Mrs. Dalloway, which was published in 1925, demonstrates how both authors utilize similar modernist strategies, such as fragmented temporality, exploration of inner life, and societal critique, but in different geopolitical and class contexts. While Woolf's Clarissa Dalloway moves through the streets of London, reflecting on her privileged life within the British Empire, Baumane's Livia contends with economic scarcity and the psychological toll of a revolution. This contrast between the characters' experiences underscores how feminist modernism can simultaneously reflect universal themes of alienation and identity, while also being shaped by local socio-political realities. From a transnational feminist perspective, these texts also, I only provide those opening passages, fragments. These texts highlight how women's experiences are deeply shaped by the also economic contexts, the scarcity of resources, the role of women as caregivers, and the disorientation caused by the socio-political upheaval in Baumane's work contrasts sharply with the material comfort and social ease that structures Clarissa's life. These differences underscore the impact of national and class conditions on gendered experiences, suggesting that modernist depictions of women's interiority are not universal, but are mediated by specific cultural and historical contexts. Susan Friedman's work on planetary modernism further expands our understanding of Baumane's contributions. Friedman argues that modernism should not be viewed as a movement exported from the West, but rather a series of global modernity shaped by the different geopolitical conditions. Baumane's writing exemplifies the idea as as her modernist techniques and feminist concerns emerge from the unique context of Eastern European modernity rather than from Western European influence alone. In this way, Baumane contributes to a reconceptualization of feminist modernism as a movement influenced by multiple, often conflicting global modernities. Moreover, Baumane's exploration of women's roles, particularly in times of socio-political upheaval, aligns with the concerns of transnational feminist modernism. Her depictions of Lívija Langren's struggle during the chaos of post-revolutionary Russia highlights how women's roles as caregivers are impacted by broader historical forces. And this again contrasts sharply with Woolf's portrayal of Clarissa Dalloway, whose economic security allows her to focus on more symbolic and emotional concerns. The juxtaposition of these two narratives illustrate how transnational feminist modernism encourages us to examine class, national, and geopolitical contexts and how they shape women's experiences differently, even when they engage with similar themes. And additionally, as the collection Women Writing Intimate Spaces suggests, women writers, especially those from smaller or multilingual literatures, often defy clear linear categorizations. Baumane, writing in the Latvian context but drawing on her experiences in post-revolutionary Russia, also reflects this transnational and locational complexity. In conclusion, in reassessing Alija Baumane's literary legacy, it becomes clear that her work deserves recognition alongside more widely studied modernist figures, both, for example, Virginia Woolf. Both authors employ modernist techniques to delve into the complexities of female experience. However, Baumane's work, set against the backdrop of specific historical context, uniquely emphasize the immediate and tangible effects on political upheaval of on women's lives, particularly the burdens placed on them by the historical events. And this short comparison of Baumane's story and Woolf's novel also highlights how their distinct cultural and historical contexts not only shape their representations, but also underscores the importance of recognizing writers like Baumane, who, though marginalized in mainstream literary history, offers also a valuable insights into the intersection of gender, class, and politics. And while both texts address themes of gender agency, resilience, they demonstrate how women navigating social constraints in distinct environments. This common focus enhances our understanding of women's struggles across national boundaries, while also highlighting the importance of the attunement to the local perspectives. Thank you.